Hi, my name is Bill Graham. Today we're going to talk a little about how to get some bebop sounds into your modal playing. Stay tuned. So recently, one of my Skype students asked me about how to get more color in his improvisations over a modal context. So like when you're playing over one chord for 8 bars or more at a time. And I thought that would be a good topic to do a video about. So I'm going to talk today about some of the concepts I've talked about in previous videos, like approach tone concepts and Barry Harris half steps, but I'm going to apply them to a modal context today. So I think today we'll look at the Herbie Hancock tune Maiden Voyage. Let's get right to it. So as you probably know, Maiden Voyage has 4 chords, and they're all dominant 7 sus chords. In the A section, you've got D7 sus and F7 sus. And those are a minor third away from each other. And then that repeats for the second A section. And then in the bridge, it goes down a whole step to E flat 7 sus. Then down another whole step to D flat 7 sus. And then for the last A section, comes back up to D7 sus to F7 sus. So there's no obvious tonal relationship between any of those chords. There's no Roman numerals that we can apply to it. Every chord is its own key. So the way that you're traditionally taught to think over that is to think the mixolydian scale of each chord. So when you're on D7 sus, playing D mixolydian, and then on F7 sus, F mixolydian, E flat mixolydian, and D flat mixolydian. But to me, if you just play those mixolydian scales, you're going to end up sounding a little bit bland. You might end up sounding a little bit like this. So that's not like the worst thing in the world. You know, it sounds okay. It's just a little bit bland. So let's see what we can do to add some color to that. So let's start off by talking about some ways that we can approach the basic chord tones. If you're interested in learning more about these approaches, you can buy a copy of my book, Chord Tone Improvisation, a practical method for playing on jazz standards. You can get a copy of this on Amazon. I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can also buy a PDF on my website. I'll leave a link for that in the description as well. So let's start by looking at some simple one-note approaches. So the chord is D7 sus, but let's simplify our thinking to just a simple D major triad. So let's start by playing a diatonic approach from below into each chord tone. Or how about a chromatic approach from below? How about a diatonic approach from above? What about a chromatic approach from above? Let's try playing some neighbor tone ideas. Let's try playing. How about we play a diatonic note above and then a chromatic note below? What about chromatic on either side? How about if we played two notes leading up into each chord tone? Or two notes down into each chord tone? What if we played two notes above and one note below? What about one note above and two notes below? What about three notes up into each chord tone? Or three notes down into each chord tone? So if you want to really emphasize the suspended sound, over that D7 sus, try playing an A minor triad. So that's a minor triad on the 5th. That gets you the 5th, dominant 7th, and 9th of the chord. And we can play all those same approaches that we've been playing into the main triad on this minor triad on the 5th. We can also use our Barry Harris added half-step rules. So just use our rules for D7. So think, all right, coming from the root, we're going to put a half step between the root and the 7th. If we come from the 9th, we'll add no half steps. Or two half steps between 2 and 1 and 1 and 7. If we start from the 3, we'll add a half step between 1 and 7. Or three half steps between 3 and 2, 2 and 1, and 1 and 7. If we start from the 4th, no half steps. Or two half steps between 2 and 1 and 1 and 7. If we start from the 5th, one half step between 1 and 7. Or three half steps between 3 and 2, 2 and 1, and 1 and 7. From the 6, no half steps. Or two half steps between 2 and 1 and 1 and 7. If we start from 7, we're going to put a half step between 1 and 7. Or three half steps between 3 and 2, 2 and 1, and 1 and 7. We could also try playing some approaches into those descending scales. So let's lead into each one of those descending scale lines from a half step below. And then up into the 2nd. Or then up into the 3rd. Or then up into the fourth, or, and then up into the fifth, or, and then up into the sixth, or, and then up into the seventh, or. Let's try a chromatic enclosure into each one of those descending patterns. Okay, now let's play the arpeggios on the root, third, fifth, and seventh of D7 into the descending scale lines. All right, now let's try playing a chromatic approach up into those ascending arpeggios. Now let's try playing a chromatic enclosure into each one of those arpeggios. If you'd like to check out some more specific examples of lines using the chord tones and approach concepts, or the Barry Harris added half-step models, check out my videos on those topics. Right now, I'd like to play another chorus on Maiden Voyage, and I'm going to integrate some of those bebop approaches we talked about today, along with the modal approach we started with. So here we go. Alright, that's about it for this episode. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Next time, we're going to be talking about how to apply all these same principles onto a standard, probably just friends. Until next time, take it easy. Thanks.